Hello, and welcome to this online version of the Pledge campaign. We were so grateful to see many of you this past Sunday, November 7th, when we had a town hall meeting going over this Pledge campaign, but we wanted to make something accessible to those of you online who weren't able to be there, or those who were there but wanted to see it again. And so we're going to go through the same program, the same outline that we used on Sunday, so that everybody has access to this and so that you can prayerfully consider what God is calling you to, especially in this upcoming year of 2022. And so when it comes to pledging, why do we pledge? Well, there can be a lot of reasons to pledge. I personally find one of the best reasons to pledge is because I know I want to give back to the church, but I'm not always sure how much. And so in pledging, I'm able to pause, and I'm able to prayerfully consider and discern what it is God can be calling me to in the next year. I can work out my finances, and instead of it being a rush each and every week or every month of wondering how much to give, I know the target that I've set. And that allows me to understand my finances and not go too much or too little. But there's a lot of other reasons to pledge too. And that's what we're going to really spend our time in. And a lot of it has to do with story. And so I want to invite Ashley into the first story.
Friends, some of you may recognize this face. This is Warner Ramirez, a beloved pastor of Kingston United Methodist Church. He has left a wonderful legacy for this church. And today we're going to hear a little bit from him about why he invests in the ministries at Kingston United Methodist Church.
Hi, my name is Warner Ramirez, and I am a far-flung sheep, and my pin is on your board alongside the other far-flung sheep. Now, I attended Kingston United Methodist from 2014 to 2017. And for part of that time, I had the pleasure of being a co-pastor at Kingston alongside Pastor Jess Wenderweedle. It has honestly been a highlight of my life to serve as a pastor at Kingston. But you all don't really know how much you fed me during that time. You fed me with a community of people in a time that I felt alone. You fed me with grace when I had a subpar sermon. You fed me with hope in times of despair. And you quite literally fed me with actual food, whether it was the feed truck or pastries dropped off by Jim Carroll or the Canes and the Heacocks having me over for a meal. You fed me. You fed me by teaching me how to be a pastor. I will forever be grateful. I still give to Kingston each year because I know that God continues to use you to feed others with a message of hope, love, truth, justice, redemption, and grace. Kingston is a refuge for the questioner, the doubter, as well as a home for the believer and the goofy ones. As a Californian wandering restless in New Jersey, I found a home at Kingston, and you fed me well. I continue to give, not as a way to pay back, but I give out of gratitude and trusting that God is using you all to feed more sheep. Please join me in pledging and giving to Kingston UMC. I trust in God's calling for Kingston to feed more sheep. And you do that so well. Blessings to you.
So here's our congregational agenda for today. There are a lot of ways that we can break up the budget. We can go line by line, but that would take a long time and it wouldn't really help us understand what we're doing. And so instead of doing that, we wanted to break things up into these 5 buckets to help you see how you have already been feeding more sheep.
The first way that you as a congregation have fed more sheep is through creative innovation. And as you can see in the photos here, these are just a number of the ways that we have been able to gather outside, socially distant, in a way that was safe during a global pandemic. We have Dee Dee here in the Easter egg hunt, our VBS from this past summer, and also our annual Fall Arts Festival. But I would like to point you to a really important picture on the upper left-hand side. It was when our congregation and Princeton United Methodist Church decided to do an outdoor movie with one another. And it wasn't just any movie, but In the Heights, done by Lin-Manuel Miranda, who is Puerto Rican. And our district superintendent, Hector, who also happens to be Puerto Rican, stopped by. And he was just so touched by the fact that our church would choose to congregate and watch this movie in particular together. It is a way in which we have been creatively innovative during this pandemic. And it is a way that we have fed more sheep.
Another way that we have fed more sheep has been through deepening diversity, and that can take on a lot of different forms. But one that we want to point to here is looking at the ways in which we have opened up the flock and included more sheep within our fold. So you'll see that not only Jaslyn and Carrie and Colin and Emmett have celebrated their 1-year anniversary of being at Kingston, which means that they have started coming to Kingston through a pandemic when we were solely online. But we're also able to celebrate Sarah becoming a certified candidate in the United Methodist Church for ordination. And lastly, but not least, baby Fia, who was baptized back in June outside through and into this church body. We've been deepening diversity through including more people in the flock, and that has been one of the ways that we've been feeding more sheep. Contagious joy. Another way that we have been feeding more sheep has been through contagious joy. It has been a big change to go from online to in-person hybrid. We now have the option. We now have the joyous time of being with one another back in the sanctuary after 581 days apart. And week after week during Joys and Concerns, someone mentions how joyful it is for them to be with their church in their church. This contagious joy is just another way that we are able to feed more sheep.
Next, we have fed more sheep through engaged growth. We've offered a number of small groups and activities, even during a global pandemic, most of them being online, so that as a community, we could engage in this church further and come to form more fruitful relationships with one another. We did online baking together from Monday, Thursday. We did a Bayard Rustin Holy Troublemakers group. We made Advent wreaths with one another. We've offered a number of these groups, but there has been one family in particular that has been extremely engaged in these groups, the Siddell family. Through all the 7 small groups that we were able to offer this past year and the 6 activities, they have been able to join for every single one. And we only hope that we could continue as a community to be as engaged and as dedicated as they were this past year. That is a way that we have fed more sheep in our community. Our last and debatedly most significant way that we have fed more sheep is through compassionate servanthood. As you can see in the photos before you, these are all the pictures of the ways that you have given to St. Bartholomew's Lutheran Church. They're a church that is in Trenton that feed at this moment 3,000 people a week who are food insecure. And they specifically feed a large population of undocumented people, for they do not ask for any information when they give out food to these people. And y'all have been compassionate servants this past year, giving 50 bags of clothing, donating 300 bags of groceries, and packing yourselves 2,100 bagged lunches to this community. You have served the greater church well, and you have quite literally fed more sheep. So your generosity fed more sheep. As you take a moment to look at these photos, rejoice in the ways that you have given faithfully to God. It is without you, we would not be able to have this ministry. It is your generosity that brought us through this past year.
So now as we look ahead, we're able to see all the ways that you have fed more sheep, and that through your faithfulness and through your pledging in the previous year, we have been able to be in the community, we have been able to be formed ourselves, and we have been able to look at a bigger understanding of what the kingdom of God is. So looking to 2022, at our budget at a glance, we've decided to break up the money into those same 5 different buckets, being able to see the percentages there. 9% for creative innovation, 19% for engaged growth, 21% for deepening diversity, 24% for contagious joy, and 27% for compassionate servanthood. And our total budget for 2022, our projected budget is $107,301. And some of you who were at the pledge campaign last year are probably noticing that that number is a little bit bigger than it was in previous years. And that's because we're understanding our budget differently. Yes, some things have gone up in price, but it's not just that. There's actually another portion that we've kind of held outside of the budget that we're including now in the budget. It's something called shared ministries. And like the name suggests, it's a sharing of ministry. It's actually an obligation as a United Methodist Church to give to the greater Church of United Methodism. So this means that some of the money that we are giving is going to local and area-wide ministry in New Jersey, but also some of the money that we're giving through shared ministries is going to the global church. Everything from giving scholarships to students both in the US and outside, being able to help with any kind of relief work after all of the disasters that have happened in the past few years. Our money is able to serve the greater church and the greater world. And so it fits perfectly into that compassionate servanthood bucket. So this is our total. These are the numbers. What are the next steps? Well, we think that there are 4 next steps for us to take. First off is to finish strong for 2021. To not only complete our pledges for 2021, but also think about year-end giving above and beyond our pledge amount. Likewise, to increase our shared giving from 37%, which is what we're currently at and what we did last year, increasing it to 40%. Again, thinking of that bigger mission of the whole wide world. Another step for us is to continue to explore this relationship between KUMC and PUMC, believing that we can have, through this deeper partnership, we can have a greater impact in our mission of feeding more sheep locally, regionally, and globally. We also want to enhance our systems. Herb has done an amazing job with our finances in the past few years, but we want to help him out. We want to be able to provide something for him so it's easier for him to take in all of the data, but then also help you too. That through this system that we're looking at, we would be able to have a safe and secure way for you to be able to access where you are with your own giving. So that if you wanted to download your giving statement, you could do that at any time so that you can check in and see where your pledge is at. And then last but not least, is to consider pledging for 2022. To prayerfully consider what God is doing in and through you right now and what God could be calling you to for 2022. For what discipleship, financial discipleship, could look like for this next year. And so you'll probably find yourself in one of 3 categories. You might be a financial leader at KUMC, and I'd invite you to consider what it means to deepen your financial discipleship. Your own leadership and generosity that has continued for many years, and we hope will continue for many more. But what does it look like for you to take one more step in that ongoing work of discipleship when it comes to your finances? Maybe you've been a consistent giver, and we'd invite you to consider what it would look like to increase your pledge amount by 10%. So if in 2021 you gave 10%, maybe for 2022, you give 11%. Or maybe you're a first-time giver. Maybe you've given a few times, but you've never pledged per se, and you're wondering if that's something that God could be calling you to. If so, I'd invite you to consider the amount of $500 to start there. For some, that's a stretch. For some, that might be too much of a stretch, and if so, that's okay. But start there. Prayerfully consider what that could look like for you. Knowing that in and through your gifts, whether it's pledging $500 for the next year, increasing your pledge by 10%, prayerfully considering what deepening your leadership and generosity could look like. That through your pledging, through your giving, through your generosity, through your deepening of financial discipleship, we are able to increase our mission in the local area, in the regional area, and globally.
Now, friends who are in person received a pledge card in their order of worship. So you might be wondering right now, how do I give for 2022? Well, one of the ways, if you are subscribed to our weekly emails, is that in our midweek email, we have a pledge card that is an embedded link in the email. So you can go over there, click on it, and fill out your pledge for 2022. If you are not on that email list and would like to leave, please feel free to reach out to Skitch and we will add you to that list. Another way is that you will be receiving through snail mail an actual pledge card, and alongside it, a pledge letter, which has a little bit more of an explanation of this campaign and what our ministry vision is going to look like for this upcoming year. Now, our ask for you today is that by the end of the month of November in 2021, you would have submitted your pledge for 2022. This is a great time to gather your family and prayerfully discern what it is that you feel God is calling you to give for this upcoming year. So how is God calling you to feed more sheep in 2022? Thank you for joining us.